Hi, everybody, and welcome to this webinar from StraightUp Solar about how many panels should your solar array have. My name is Riley Francis. I'm a marketing coordinator here at StraightUp Solar. I have a degree in environmental science and a NABCEP associate certification. NABCEP is a certification among the solar industry for solar professionals. Patrick? Oh, Patrick, you're on mute.
I was just looking for one. Thank you. Hello, my name is Patrick Schaaf. I'm a project developer over here at StraightUp Solar. Been in the business now for about 3.5 years. I graduated from Illinois State University with a degree in renewable energy and a minor in environmental studies. And today, as Riley mentioned, we're going to be talking about how we kind of figure out how many panels would go onto your roof or ground. So there's various factors that affect the number of panels used, and depending on the homeowner, you may have one of these factors, none of these factors, or all of them to help determine the system size for your home. So first is the electricity provider. Sometimes the utility will put a cap in place or things like that. They have certain things built into their net metering agreement, your interconnection agreement, that will determine how many panels you can put up. Two is your electrical usage history. So we like to get ideally a 12 history of your electrical usage in order to kind of run some numbers and figure out the system size. Number three is your offset goals. And so everybody's different. Everybody has different reasons for looking into a solar project. And that's a big factor in determining this. Roof space and ground space. So the roof space, depending on what size your house is and how many dormers and how choppy it is on the roof, that could limit the number of panels. And also ground space. You want to make sure you have a wide open, south-facing swatch of land there to install the ground mount. Number five is panel efficiency. So panel efficiency is pretty key there as well, because if you are able to put up a certain number of panels on your roof in the standard wattage, but you're looking to get a little more out of that roof space available, you can opt in for maybe a high efficiency module. And we'll go on to all these in more detail. The other is production factor. It's a little of a number there, but I'll go ahead and explain all that when we get to the slide. And we'll just go on there. So how do we figure it out? So we talk on the phone a little bit and get an idea, get the map of the home and get an idea of some of the goals for the solar. So we create and draft a system layout. We run a production estimate for that system, compare with electrical usage and offset goals, and then adjust the system size as needed. So the utility limit, as I mentioned earlier, some utilities will have a limit to the size of a PV system that could be installed in their territory. And so some examples from the various providers that I've seen, some have a 10 kW capacity cap, meaning you cannot put more than 10 kilowatts of solar capacity on your property or on 1 meter. 25 kW capacity cap, and then the system cannot be above 90% in some territories. It can't be above 90% of the client's previous months of usage. Another way is based on a formula, and I know that's kind of vague there, and we'll jump into that with Ameren, Missouri. So they have a formula that they use to determine the size of the system based on last year's usage, the last 12 months of usage. And the good news is, though, that not all utilities will have a cap on system size. Some of them allow you to install as much as you'd like. And then in some cases, you can even plan for the future increase of usage by putting up to maybe 120% or 150% of your offset, depending on what your future plans are. Electricity usage. And so we like to get a previous 12 months of your usage history. Any plans to increase or decrease that future usage. Items such as a new pool, hot tub, EV charging, finished basement, or increasing occupancy. And I always like to use the example of having my kids at the house. They leave the lights on and don't turn off the TV, etc. And so naturally, my usage has increased over the last few years, as opposed to wife and I. So an example of a decrease in usage for the future, if someone was going to upgrade their HVAC system to a high efficiency system or maybe a geothermal unit, a decrease in occupancy, and just general like tightening up of efficiencies. If somebody's getting a new roof and they say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and blow in 13 inches of insulation. So you would generally see that decrease in usage over the next couple of years because of that efficiency. And if we don't have a 12 months usage history, that's not the end of the world. There's various things we can do to get that kind of narrowed down for system size, and so square footage of the home is one of those. Is the home all electric or dual fuel, as I mentioned earlier? And just to let you guys know, this is not 100% accurate, but it still does provide a pretty good rough estimate. And then any data usage that we have will help the model be more accurate. So if you've got 6 or 7 months of usage, we can sort of fill in those gaps with some data. Earlier, the goals for a solar project. So in my first phone call with a client, a lot of times I'll just ask them kind of what their goals are. Why are they looking into solar? What is their motivation? A lot of times I get financial motivation, energy independence, environmental motivation, and of course some of those that dislike their utility and kind of want to stick it to the utility any chance they can. And so those are the four main goals, and there's a variation of all four of those. Some people just have one in mind. About 80% of our clients kind of have some sort of combination of those. And then, of course, there's 10 that really are interested in the environmental aspect only, and the other 10% probably in the financial aspect only. One of the things that we like to do is make sure that you have the available and usable space for the solar array. So the example over here in the picture is going to show, kind of a choppy roof layout, which definitely affects the size of a system that we can put together for this particular client. You see on the eastern side of the house, he's got area for two smaller arrays. But obviously, looking at the size of the house, he is all electric and he's using a substantial amount of electricity. And so, we kind of looked at a roof mount first, and that just wasn't really meeting his goals. And so we talked about a ground mount. And as you can see here with the trees surrounding the house, essentially, that there's not really good area for the ground mount. I mean, you might be able to fit one on the northern end, and so we explored that option as well. But when I found out that his septic system was on the northern side of the house, then that's not doable either. Panel efficiency. So StraightUp Solar does offer a wide variety of modules and variants and variables with efficiency. And so, if the system size is limited by that roof space, a client can always opt to upgrade to a high efficiency modules to help meet that goal. And so, for example, if you've got 36 modules and you're at a 85% offset and you're just really, really wanting to get to that 100%, may opt to go with a higher efficiency module in order to get closer to that 100% while we're still fitting those 36 modules, because the standard rooftop solar module that we use they're all roughly the same size, about 3.5 by 5.5 feet. So going with the high efficiency option can help meet those goals. So production factor, as I mentioned earlier, it's a little complex, and I'll try to keep it as general as possible without getting any confusion there. So the production factor is the kilowatt hours per kilowatt of solar installed. And so each project has a unique production factor, and all the variables listed below are taken into account and then some. So geographical location, the roof orientation, obviously south facing roof is something that we want to have as an optimal roof face, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, an east west facing roof is bad. You just may need to add about 10 to 15% more panels to kind of get that same level of offset. The roof pitch, a more shallow pitch roof, you're going to be geared more towards summertime production and less in the winter. A nice maybe 30, 33-degree pitch will kind of have a good balance between summer and winter and then provide you with a higher production factor. Shading also comes into play there. So I'm talking about trees and chimneys and maybe the neighbor's house or a taller building next door. And then equipment selection, as we mentioned, the high efficiency options with the modules and the inverters and things like that can all come into play when getting that production factor. And so typically what we see in a production factor for a roof mounted system is around 1350. And so that's 1350 kilowatt hours per kilowatt of solar installed on the roof. For ground mounts, so again, if it's optimal conditions with no shade, it's probably going to be around 1400. And then so I've got a couple examples here from previous clients of mine, and just wanted to show you kind of a real scenario here. So the system size on this gentleman's house, you see a perfectly south-facing roof. It is probably 33 degrees of a pitch there, so it's a nice optimal angle for the panels. And then it's 7.15 kW, so we use 22 panels, and the estimated production of that is going to be 9,652 kilowatt hours for the year. looking at his usage history, 11,162 kilowatt hours. That's basically his last 12 months of usage from the utility. So using that number, we can come up with an offset percentage of around 86%. And so the limiting factors in his situation were available roof space, because he's working with the south-facing roof, and then the setbacks enforced by the municipality. And so you see here on each edge of this roof, there are 3-foot setbacks required from the municipality for fire code and building codes. And then also we have to stay 3 feet from the top of the roof. And that also varies again by municipality, which fire codes they've adopted and which building codes they've adopted. So the client's goal for this project was kind of a best buck scenario. And so I mentioned to him, potentially putting an array on the eastern side of the roof, kind of north of what you see here, and then possibly the western side. And so two things: he didn't want the additional cost for the small amount of energy he would gain, and then he also didn't want the solar panels facing the street. And so again, you see these factors all play into one system with the roof space, the setbacks enforced, and the client's goal for the project. And so the next house here is my home, and I've designed a 7.7 kW system to kind of show you the impact that shading has on the system. So, this array is larger than the previous slide, and it's actually going to produce a lot less energy, or around the same amount of energy. I apologize, around the same amount of energy as that previous system, because of that shading factor. And so my offset is around that 10,000, or I'm sorry, my offset percentage is around 86%, with an annual usage of 10,472 kilowatt hours. And again, utility, my case was going to be the utility cap. Because I have Ameren, Missouri, they do have that cap set in place based on the last 12 months of usage. And so the formula dictates that I can only have about 7.7 kW. And then also shading is a limiting factor. So I do have room to put a few more modules on the roof, but I cannot do that because of the utility. So my option here, I guess, would be to trim back or possibly cut down a tree to allow more sunlight, and then that production factor would go up.
Great. Thank you so much, Patrick. I will be sending out some contact info. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. And if you'd like to get a free solar quote, we can get you started on that too. All right. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.